from Santa Clara to Fairfield, and even in the Central Valley cities of Fresno and Stockton.
For the record, I'm Diana, and today is May 14th, 2016, and I will be playing Dr. Bill Deagle's NUTRIMEDICAL report, the third hour, and it's going to be the highlights from there that I found most interesting. And that way, he puts things into perspective on what's going on. So stay tuned, and I'll catch you on the flip side.
Hey everybody, I'm Heather Black, and this is One for the Record.
This is all actual news right here. Background radiations are still high in areas surrounding Fukushima, close to 2 millirem in some areas. Carolyn Kennedy, the ambassador, took a visit to Fukushima, and you'll notice everybody there still is wearing protective gear like respirators, full-face respirators, and anti-contamination clothing, because the contamination levels are still very high. Nothing's going down. So, I mean, right. In other words, that's what I'm trying to get. It's kind of trying to have tongue-in-cheek. If there was any kind of news at all, I would like to see some good news, like instead
right,
of
But they didn't give you a specific as to what was leaking and what was
No.
No, they just tell you, we did something great. We're not going to give you any more details, but it's good news.
Yeah, well,
that's pretty crazy. So here's the next question. We know the volcanism is occurring around the world. A few weeks ago we had here, because we have desert air, because the systems are being blocked from the North Pacific. Now, why is that significant? Because when massive radiation release happens, they're not going to just be able to block it with blocking weather systems. It means that people are going to start getting acutely sick, and they may not directly link it. Their doctors are not trained in toxicology, immunology, or these kind of very silent killers. For example, you'll see more people get atrial fibrillation, chronic fatigue, myopathies, myofascial pain syndromes, all kinds of things that'll be nondescript. People getting much more allergic because charged particles attached to allergens, these hot fleas, and they make the allergen particle in the air far more allergenic. So it's going to be subtle, but people are going to start getting acute on chronic radiation sickness. Now, they're panicking because they know if you have 320 million Americans that suddenly realize that they've been duped and the government's doing nothing but actually preparing them to die from chronic accumulative long-acting radioisotopes like strontium-90 and cesium-137, Obama and his administration, the IAEA, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission are doing zip. They're basically saying, we don't care if the population in America gets as sick as the Japanese where their birth rate is 0. We don't care if people have 12-year-olds dying of cardiac arrest from cardiac arrhythmias from cesium-137. We don't care if people end up becoming lobotomized zombies caused by radiation sickness. We don't care if people get bloody diarrhea, bloating, or their immune system failures to get acute leukemia or aplastic anemia or autoimmune disease. We don't give a rat's behind. That's what the governments are saying by their inaction. And I think that they basically, Agenda 21, world population reduction, this is an active, not a passive process, and Fukushima is just a start, because a major quake is not just going to hit Fukushima in northern Japan, it's going to hit 5 other sites that are likely to go down that are already structurally damaged. It also means that the push which Obama's done to give equipment to the Israelis to hit the Bashir reactor is likely to go. And there's around the world, out of 500 some reactor sites, some with more than one reactor, at least half of them are in the strike zone of an earthquake. So volcanism is increasing dramatically because there's lots of evidence, and I put it up before, that we have an approaching red dwarf star. I don't know how far out it is, but the evidence is accumulating over the past 30 years that a red dwarf star is coming into our inner solar system. The first real serious was the hyper-elliptical comets coming in, the action at a distance, the changes in the weather systems on all the planets in our inner solar system. We're seeing electrophysiological and other effects on gravitonics and volcanology that's dramatically increasing not only weird solar activity, but also increasing the chances we're going to have a major volcanic eruption. We have Yellowstone, where the animals are smart enough, they're taking off. We have volcanism everywhere, major quakes in South America, along the Ring of Fire. And here in America, where Jasko, the last director of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, put forward the study, they're awfully slow at reporting exactly what their consequences are going to be. It's almost like their study says, well, we did enough study that in these serious reactors, we need to study more. So the study basically says, one, Annan, which we talked about last week, is failing, but all the other reactors, they don't look good, but we're going to study them more. That's all I get out of it so far. I don't get a immediate condemnation of, like, we need billions of dollars so that these reactors don't lose their control and vent off massive amounts of radiation to their local populations. What I hear is the study says, it's so bad, we better study this more. Am I wrong, or is that pretty good analysis of it?
Exactly correct. You remember from last week, we kicked apart several of those technical reports right on your program, and basically, we know that something is wrong. We know something has to get fixed. Let's study it more to figure out exactly what.
Well, first off,
you hit the nail right on the head.
Let me give you the benchmarks, because I have background that covers a wide range of things. So if I did a plant walkthrough, I wouldn't just talk about the areas where people are going to bump their head in an header or get a back injury from certain things. I'd actually analyze the chemical production, the gas areas, the valve systems, the control systems, the alarm systems, etc. And what they need to do is they need to go around the entire plant, make a structural, simulated computer model go around with ultrasound and X-ray of every joint, every structural member of those reactors, and generate real data and analyze exactly where the reactors are likely to have a structural failure. Then they need to have the kind of thrust data in terms of the kind of vibrations that are likely to be generated and what frequency they are based on data accumulated in that specific area, because they'll have that. They need to put that data in terms of horizontal and vertical thrust. If you have, for example, in LA, those earthquakes are likely to be what's called upthrust earthquakes. So it's a different waveform. That's why one building will be destroyed, another will not, because the building has to have harmonics similar to the frequency of the earthquake. If those frequencies are not similar and they don't accumulate in the structure, causing giant waves, there's no structural damage. So they can figure this out with computer modeling, and that they don't need to do more studies. They need to gather data and model it. Then they came up with a very quick answer of what needs to be done and where they need to structurally reinforce the structure not to break down. Oh my God, oh my God. But a regular person, they can live with all kinds of crap that totally conflict. Welcome back, Chris. So what we have is a series of what I call tap dancing nuclear journalists trying to kind of tell us we're going to study it more because it's so bad. Well, guess what? I laid out the benchmarks. It's going to be in my updated book, which will be released here very shortly. It'll be in a summary article, which we have posted here at NUTRIMEDICAL and over on Rence's website. And you've been a major part of contribution in this. So even though it's your radio name, you've been a major part of contributing to this information analysis. And as I say, the tagline for the show, if there's only one thing to remember, is ask better questions. Because if you don't ask better questions, you're not going to own the truth. And if you don't own the truth, you're not going to do anything about it. You cannot listen to the pundits on the news media, the IAEA, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, because there are all kinds of forces trying to tell them that, I don't say that now. Even Arnie Gunderson, you can see him toning down things to say, well, it's not that bad. It's this or that. I'm thinking, no, people need to know the whole truth. This is an extinction level event that over time, not only is what's going on in Fukushima, but at other nuclear sites around the world with major earthquakes, that we could have, or even just with a power blackout. Let's say you got a great CME off the sun or a red dwarf star, which generates a CME hundreds of times more powerful than the sun can. You could have an extinction level event occur with just the nuclear reactors blowing all over the planet, just because they don't have backup power. If the Nibiru fault system happened, there's at least 25 reactor sites that all have these old-style reactors that immediately are going to go into default and will not be able to maintain containment, period. So we're not just talking about Fukushima. We're talking about the southeastern United States becoming a radioactive dead zone. And people don't grasp that. They don't understand just how stupid and how incompetent our government is. Our president, our Congress, and our Senate, I talk to these morons, and I worked with the people at the FBI and CDC. These people take stupidity to an Olympic level, along with evil. And we need to call it out straight to say, look, there's an IQ gap of about 30 points between the public and the so-called rulers and the bureaucrats that rule us. They're dangerous, stupid, conflicted, corrupted, and have walking around with all kinds of cognitive dissonance. You can't just play with these issues and have a sharp pencil. So, Chris, where the heck do you think this is going? Because I really see disaster. I see radiation sickness that doctors won't recognize, that it's going to start really hitting people in the next years. We have those snowy owls dying along the coast. We have accumulation of pine needles. We have dead sea lions. We have shrinkage of their brains. We have stress and algae that are causing increased domoic acid. It's not just ultraviolet light. It's radiation stress from Fukushima, accumulated bio levels of cesium-137, strontium-90, plutonium, etc. All these stressors increase domoic acid, which causes acetylcholine pathways to be permanently blocked. Where I see things going is not good. I see increasing release of radiation from Fukushima is going to further damage the ozone layer, further cause major ground-level ultraviolet light. And by the way, one of the theses, and I mentioned multi-causes for the loss of the bees are being lost because the geomagnetic field of the Earth is disrupted. The ultraviolet light's burning their eyes out, so they're going blind. We're seeing neonicotinoid pesticides, which now are banned in Europe, so that's a major contributing factor. We see the overgrowth of mites and other pathogens which produce mycotoxins. But the worst of all those factors is ultraviolet light. And it's caused by things like Fukushima. And after Fukushima blew, the amount of radiation getting to ground level was dramatically higher. So if you don't wear good protective eyewear, or if you're a surfer and you go out in the oceans, you're going to get to at least a pterygium, which is growth across your central visual axis, or you're going to get retinal damage, or you're going to come down with skin cancer, or any one of the combination of the above. And if you don't listen to me, because I'm an expert on these areas, you're going to suffer. So you need to take notice now. You're not going to hear this on other shows on this network or elsewhere, except through me. And the reason why I say this is because I have the expertise and the guts to stand up and say, this is what's happening, and we know the scientific facts that we can solve it, but they don't want to. That, to me, is a monumental crime of omission, that we're not doing anything to intervene. Chris, where do you think this is going? Because I see Fukushima as an example and are kind of whitewashing the JASCO reports and saying we need to study this more. What do they want to do? Study it until we have a major quake in New Madrid? Do we want to study it until we have a major, look at what happened at the WIP facility in New Mexico. This facility was hit by hydrofracking. We know that I just talked to Ryan, he was on the second hour. They had a major quake there in Oklahoma, near Edmond, Oklahoma, probably caused by hydrofracking. Most people don't realize hydrofracking is not only poisoning the water table and destroying it, but it's a major trigger for earthquakes. This is not funny. And they need to grasp just how dangerous it is. And the public's out there just walking around, going shopping, going to restaurants, and doing their thing and thinking, Dr. Deagle's nuts. I feel so secure that he's crazy. I won't listen to anything he says because everybody else, and my doctor thinks he's crazy, and my politician thinks he's crazy, and everybody thinks he's crazy, because if he was correct, I would be cringing in fear, and I don't want that. So my best mental health procedure is to think, he's just crazy. Well, guess what? Take it out of the dead hominem. I don't care what you think about me. Think of it this way. Just ask the questions and research it yourself. If you look at this data, you say, oh my God, it's an oh my G moment. OMG moment here, coming at you. What are you going to do? What are you going to do when your wife miscarries because she has a ball of unorganized cells coming out of her? What are you going to do when you've got a cardiac arrhythmia or your son's acting like their autism is getting significantly worse because cesium is concentrating in his frontal lobes? What are you going to do when you got bloody diarrhea and a nosebleed and you realize you've been radiationally poisoned? What are you going to do when the teeth fall out of your head? What are you going to do when you get problems with, cancer, precancer, all kinds of muscle wasting, cardiac arrhythmias, myofascial pain syndromes, cardiac congestive heart failure? These are the things that are going to sneak up and bite a lot of our population. The unborn, they're really going to get smacked down. There was a 42% increase in fetal in neonatal intensive care unit death in a ICN in Pennsylvania within the first 3 months after Fukushima. 42%. That's a long way from Japan, okay? So you need to understand that there's published reports now that saying in the first 6 months alone, there were 22,000 Americans that died prematurely because of Fukushima. This is 3 years plus on now. And the longer-acting isotopes are considerably more dangerous than radioiodine. If you just have adequate levels of nitriodine in your body, the radioiodine is going to do nothing. But now you got strontium and cesium and other long-acting isotopes taking off like a rocket. We're in deep, deep trouble. Not just the snowy owls and the sea lions and the krill and the sardines and the salmon run. We're in deep doo-doo. And they're getting ready to call the human herd. You got to understand this. They don't want us. The future does not want us. The globalist billionaires don't want us. They want life extension technology. They want to have domed cities to protect themselves from the screw-ups of the environment they're doing. They want to get rid of most of us. And if you think, oh, that's just a bizarre conspiracy theory, you're going to face
written law, California law, United States federal law, NRC to enforce. By law, have to have somewhere to put the cement fuel rods. They promised us they would have the cement fuel rods taken care of by 1976, then by 1982, then by 1985, then 1991. It's 2013, you still store them on site.